designs that you're creating and the brand that you're creating, you want it to be supporting what your organisational goals are.
Everyone talks about branding, but almost no one gets this part right.
Big brands now are using more of the influencers rather than the actual product.
So what actually makes a brand work today?
So it's not just like we like red. There's a reason for all the different elements that you have in your brand. There's a genuine rationale behind it.
Because real brands aren't designed, they're engineered.
There's no real buy-in at the top. It's very difficult. Yeah, so culture is massive.
And most companies fail before they even begin.
AI is a tool, right? It will get you about that much of that journey. Big issue with that is it's not authentic.
And in a world chasing shortcuts, authenticity is still the only thing that wins.
So David, Larraine, thank you for joining me today. I want to have a conversation around brand and brand identity. I think before we get into that, I was just looking up some general stats around the importance of brand. So I had to write them down, I just couldn't remember them. But it's like 46% of customers said they pay more for brands that they can identify with.
Yes.
88% of customers say authenticity is key to deciding which brands they use.
Yeah.
So obviously a sector you guys are in and help people with. The value, therefore, is unquestionable, but maybe just get the ball rolling before we dig into that, the brand and developing a brand out. Perhaps just for our listeners, just talk a bit of background to your business and OPX. Start with you if you want. Right?
Yeah. So OPX has been going for about 40 years. We haven't been there for 40 years.
About 30. About 30.
It's longer. But anyway, but David and I joined about the same time, didn't we?
We did.
Around 20 years ago when it was a bigger studio with some founding partners who'd all gone to college together, and the business grew. David and I joined in the same year, about 21 years ago. And over the years, the founders have left and retired. They're a little bit older than us. And then 2 years ago, the final founder left and exited the business and left David and I to continue, asked us if we wanted to. We said we'd love to. So we've continued with the reputation, knowing that we can work together, and just sort of been out on our own for 2 years. And that's our background. My particular background was project management and client services. So I had all that side of the business.
You with the creative side, David?
Yeah, so I was I am the creative director. So yeah, I think we joined back in 2006 or 7. Remember, it was February. That's all I remember. So we've seen the big shift of brands and things going across. That's why even our studio shifted. We can get into that in more detail. But we've kept the flame going, as it were. Well, basically, it's like, what else are we going to do? We've been working together for 20 odd years. What we're going to do, close the studio and go and get a job somewhere. But probably...
maybe control your own destiny.
Well, yeah, but I also think there's a thing about, maybe we're too set in our ways could be potentially a thing, especially when you run a studio and you go in somewhere and they're like, you're like, well, we can do it I've been doing it like this for 20 odd years.
Yeah,
so yeah, who knows? But no, definitely prefer carrying on,
Yeah, we've got pretty high standards, I think, and they're standards that we've worked to for, they've sort of been, it was a good kind of mentoring those 20 years, especially working with those founders, like uber high standards, which David and I just naturally expect of ourselves and everybody that's working with us. It's a good school. It was a really good schooling.
I'd imagine being the creative type as well, it's ever evolving as well, so you never stood still. I imagine that's the joy of it, but also the challenge of it.
It is the joy, and I think that's a thing you can either be sort of set in your ways and not adapt, or you adapt. So, there's always, for instance, in the industry, there's new software that comes out. That software now is sort of taken over the market leader. that everyone gets trained on. So even when we go back to unis and stuff and give talks, it's like, are you being trained on this? And it's like, no. It's like, well, to be fit ready for work, you actually have to be trained on that. So you've always got to shift, but there's always, I suppose with design is always influenced by culture and things like that. So things happen, certain things. So the visual of what I learned, the visual sort of aesthetic, it's still there, but nowadays it's all what I call like ladled on design and visual, because everything has to be for the phones nowadays. It's not about being too corporate and stuff. It's all about that immediate gratification of what design is, which is what we're not classically, I wasn't classically trained in, but I don't think design colleges should be classically training people to go, here's some fodder, put it on Instagram, and hopefully it's a success.
So interesting then. So and you mentioned now, obviously in a society now where there's kind of immediate gratification and immediate engagement, if you looked at brands and perhaps even work you've done 2 decades ago to what you do now, is it more tailored to, I'll use the word attention grab, it might not be the right term, but
well, I think the sort of the brands or the visual identities that we create for clients need to work in that environment. It's interesting now that a lot of brands, like when we say brands, big brands now, are using more of the influencers rather than the actual product or whatever it is. It's more about the getting that message out and getting these influencers to talk about it and hopefully get some sales from it. But our brands, stuff we work on, I like to call them visual identities apart from brands. I always think if you're a brand, if you're Coca-Cola or Nike or something like that, when you're an organization and stuff, yes, there is the thing about brand. But I think, what we do is more about that visual identity, how it comes across, and then how that talks and communicates across everything. And social is obviously one of those. It's just another channel, right? It's from a print through to social.
Yeah, okay.
But what you want it to be doing is, and this is the sort of strategic part of it, the designs that you're creating and the brand that you're creating, you want it to be supporting what your organisational goals are. So what new markets, got a new product, we want to pivot. You want the brand and the brand strategy and the visual identity and everything that goes underneath it.
Yeah, work.
So that sort of is there to operationalise all of that. So it's not just like we like red or, we like this. There's a reason for all the different elements that you have in your brand. There's a reason that you have that photography style. There's a reason that you have that typeface. There's a genuine rationale behind it.
And when you're working with corporates, is it do they understand the depth of that journey, or is that something that you often have to walk them through?
Some do, some don't. But it depends the size and the type of the organisation. You'd be amazed how many don't, and you think that they should. And you'd be amazed how many do and get it. So it's a real mix, I'd say. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So then looking at brands and what they're doing, I guess, we're stating the obvious here, but the part of it's building authenticity with their customers. So I guess staying on brand's really important. And is that something so we touched on earlier before we came on air about creative studios and then having in-house creatives.
Yeah.
And I guess, obviously people can do things in-house. That's what they naturally would want to do, probably cost perspective. They often look at it that way, but I'd imagine ultimately the experts primarily are in studios because hence they're running the businesses. So how's that challenge in making sure supporting the business, steering them in the direction without, I'll use the word stampling all over the brand. I'm sure they don't, but keeping it on the railroad that you guys put together?
Well, I think there's two things. There's the vision and there's the reality, right? So a lot of studios, big or small, we try not to impose our self on it. We've always got to think about the end user, making it robust, as it were. So I think there's always a challenge, where my vision or the studio's vision or the creative that we're working with, the design team's vision, can become diluted when it goes through, because sometimes I suppose it's like if you're cooking, if haven't got the ingredients and you've thrown it together, slight mismeasurements will make it taste different. So I think there's that thing going across. So when we work on projects, we like to bring in-house creatives in the studio so they understand it. So they're not just going, here's a playbook or a guideline, off you go. You know, even if you've got a template, it's like, okay, I've got too much copy. What do I do? You know, so what's the creative thinking about actually reducing it or maybe changing the layout? So we always try and help people that way as much as possible. But it does come back to that vision and reality. We want to create the best for the client and for everyone, so it actually works. Because there's no point having something that it looks great and it's like, well, I'm not skilled, or internal people aren't skilled to produce that. And we've seen it. It does come up, and I think it's something that internal commissioners of design need to think about, having the people in place to do it. But it's something we do. We like to create the pieces in tandem with the team, and we always offer that kind of, if you want me to look at anything, run it past me, and I can do a critique on it or whatever, and go back and actually maybe try it like this. Because I think it is hard giving over the keys to someone else and going, right, off you go. You know, it's that.
And the sad truth is that nothing, and for the 20 years we've been doing it, everybody's brand, no matter how amazing it can be in animation and, you know, in digital, everybody's got a PowerPoint template, which reduces it to the...
Or Word.
Yeah, reduces it to the, the worst sort of common denominator. So it's a challenge, but yeah.
And in your conversations with corporates as well, understanding the power of culture within a business, and the business that'll have values, is that again an important part that's bled in those early days when you're speaking to corporates? Yeah,
if you've got if you've got a senior leader or you've got a senior leadership team who are really invested in the direction and the culture of the company, and they've got a set of behaviours that, you know, how they make decisions, from everything about how they what markets they're going to go into, how they're going to behave in a certain way, what corporate decisions they're going to make. If they're led by those values, then those types of people are really engaged, and you get a really good result when you're working on a brand with them. But if you're working with somebody, an organisation, I'm talking about maybe a medium-sized organisation, and there's no real buy-in at the top, it's very difficult. Yeah, so culture is massive.
Yeah, but you also need the culture, I think, within an organisation to empower people.
Yeah.
Because we've always seen that as well, where people try and second guess what the management might like. Whereas, and it goes back to the point of where the strategy comes in. If that's the vision, it does that and talks like that and looks like that, because that's where you've got to get to.
Yeah. Okay.
And sometimes it's really uncomfortable for people.
Yeah, sorry.
It's really uncomfortable. And you've seen them. We did a project for the University of Leeds to rebrand them from the ground up. And we did. And that was really interesting because it was really uncomfortable for them. Really. And I remember being in one of the senior leadership meetings, and they said that this was, that you could see them like quite anxious. Like, hold on, it's so different to where we are. It's been going for so long, and there was at the time a big shift to absolutely change it. And they said that was the brief. You've answered the brief. You've done exactly what we've done what we've required on the brief. But you could see them thinking, this just doesn't feel right, because it's an institution that doesn't feel like it can change, but they wanted it to change. And long and short of it was, they really liked it, everything about it, the visual language and everything else. But the actual mark which we came up with, which was the key for this whole sense of belonging and everything, was just rejected last minute because they weren't comfortable with it. And it had a bit of a senior leadership. So the senior leadership changed. So that vision of the senior leadership was there, which everyone was answering to, and everyone felt quite uncomfortable because they're set in their ways. But then when the senior leadership changed and someone came in as almost like a caretaker going, it's supposed to like football. Everything's like football. Caretaker manager sort of comes in and is like, right, we're steady this ship. We love everything else, but just leave that mark alone because it's got the heritage and the prestige to it. Right. Which is interesting because you see that some universities now which are doing that, but then they're trying to bolt on this sort of more contemporary kind of approach to it, which, the students want that kind of contemporary feel to it. So that was really interesting seeing people.
I imagine it's challenging not falling between two cracks then of what you might call old school and what you're trying to do new.
Yeah. There's, we use motion a lot in design because everything's on a phone. We don't live in a static world. But trying to bring that through into a sort of a cultural institution, it was slightly hard, but we sort of pivoted that as well because going to the point of authenticity on that project, and you see it a lot across social nowadays, is that kind of first person point of view walking into a building. If it's a workspace, we see a lot of that. Or if you're at uni, I'm outside the tower, look at this great bagel. It kind of reinforces that authenticity of a sense of place. Recently, I'll shut up talking in a minute. Recently, over the last few years, I think sort of post-COVID is quite interesting. There's this sort of sense of belonging. I think a lot of people lost their way because everything in the world sort of got disrupted. And now that sense of belonging, even going to a small workplace, is like you want to feel like you're part of something rather than I'm just an entity that is here to fulfill a task. I think that's what we like within the studio as well. We want people to feel like they're a part of something and they're shaping something.
But I suppose on the flip side of having that huge sort of institutional client where it's very difficult because it's an organisational shift, isn't it? It's a change of management, introducing a new brand. Flip side of that was it can be really wonderful to work with startups because, they've got the autonomy to change, to pivot, and they've often got a blank canvas as well. So that's work that we really enjoy. And we did a lot of work with Imperial College Business School. Sounds like all we do is education. We don't. We absolutely don't, but they've just come up. And we went to Imperial College Business School a couple of times when they ran this we did their brand for them. And then every year they run this entrepreneurship challenge where the students are invited to pitch their ideas and there's investors. And we would go and we would talk to the students. And there were the ideas that sounded really exciting. We'd approach them and say, do you want to work with us? Can we build a brand for you? And that was a way of doing some tech startups, a bit of pro bono work, which can often, lead to paid work or not. But to get something that's completely different, to have not just different clients, but just to have a different creative diet for the studio as well.
Yeah. So the founder's point, which I mentioned earlier about businesses and maybe some businesses maybe not understanding the full value of a brand, and that from a founder perspective, I guess most of them have got their head down designing something that most of us can't even appreciate. Do you find that more difficult to get to work with, or is it because they're usually small because they're starting things up agile? It makes it easier. Because I'd have thought they'd just be solely focusing on developing a bit of tech. It's just like I don't care what the front looks like.
I think if they're looking for investment, then it really does matter. How they're going to, not just what they look like, but how they're going to articulate. A lot of them have got complicated, not all of them, but, complex tech solutions. And, we work with one and they had, they've pivoted now, but they had a sensor in the back of the phone, which would sense ammonia in food, so the consumer could go in and put their phone over the shelves in supermarkets, and they could work out, actually, that's not out of date, I can buy that. That's got 3 more days on and it's now been adopted into the more commercial world and logistics, and they're doing quite well in the States. But they had a terrible name, so we helped them with that, and we gave them a story behind that name. So
yeah, that was a really interesting one. So going back to the last point, it is one of those moments when it is like, right, we've just done a big Imperial College Business School, but then there's the sort of technical side of it. How can we start those young founders? And going back to the sort of the founders, I really enjoy, and I think we as a studio really enjoy it because there's energy. I think that's the one thing, is when you meet someone who's got a vision and an energy, and even going back that these founders are more, I would say, maybe visually literate than people are slightly older than myself, maybe. Because even when we did that project, so we gave them a whole naming thing, but then there's that yin and yang. One person really got it because he was more, maybe more marketing, more visionary. Another person was more scientific. So he's like, but why would you be called that? Anyway, we got the name through, but everything we do, you've got to, if you have a reason for being called something. So they were called Open Sense, which was fine. And it is, as Lars said, it's basically paper technology with microchips that you're meant to put in the back of your phone and everything. They pivoted to the food, but we came up with the name Black Bear, and it was like, well, we'd be called Black Bear. And it's like, well, a black bear can sense 15,000 times more than a human knows. You're all about sensing. So it's about making sensing simple. And plus, when you go into a big pitch, you want someone to ask you why you called Black Bear.
yeah,
And the first time they pitched to get some funding from pharmaceuticals, I think it was, it's exactly that. Why you called Black Bear? And they explained why they called it. We've done it with other sort of listening, emotional, always on technology, think about names. And we always say no name is perfect, no matter what. But it goes back to that idea of building that brand or visual identity or reputation around it, that it becomes, okay, it feels authentic, I understand it. But having that story, founders, it's brilliant because it really helps them explain why they're called that.
Not knowing the creative market size-wise, I assume there's quite big players out there that do creative studios. You're obviously in that area, you're not small, you've got a fleet of people you lean on, but I suppose in the scale it's the big ones and the small ones.
Yeah.
So therefore, I'm going to class you setting up and running a business. You got this entrepreneur side, but so you've got to constantly just run a business. You've got to find the next customer.
Yeah.
It's very spiky, I guess. Business, do it, complete it. Yeah, there might be some ongoing relationships, but the natural business drops off. Find the next one. How difficult do you find that as business owners?
It's always been the way. That's just the nature of, I would say, small and mid-sized agency world. Making sure that the workflow is right and, is at the right level to keep the lights on, at the right level to keep the studio busy. I think, if you ask me how I find it, that's how it is, and that's how it's been for 20 years. So we just
accept it.
We just accept it. Yeah.
Yeah. We don't.
Come on.
Oh, I was going to say, we've got a reputation, and we've been going for 20 odd years together. 30 years, maybe 40 years, whoever knows. We've been going. Don't ask us what the name stands for. That's, we won't go. We can't go there. But I think that thing of, actually, we used to have a poster up called, when it said "Give a shit." The fact that we actually believe in what we do, and believe the people that we meet, and we just want to help people do good design, see it out there, and it works. And I think I used to say, and we always say it, people by people. And I think that is, even when you meet someone or a designer, you're investing your time and emotional well-being in creating something together. And I think, that is something that is important to us, because it is not, yes, there's a financial reward at the end of creating something, but actually just having that space to create something with someone that is of benefit to someone is huge. For creative teams, it's hugely rewarding.
There's like 30,000 design.
It's ridiculous.
Creative agencies in the UK. So, like I say, like back to that people by people, we're not doing anything groundbreaking, but, it's getting out and meeting people and showing that we do give a shit, because we do care, and we get really, really overly, well, I do, David, it just tells me to emotionally invested in, in all of it.
Yeah, no,
because it matters. It's our reputation, it's our brand, it matters. David always says you're only as good as your last job. So, you don't want to, we want to do a good job. We want to keep the referrals going, which we still get,
And it's in every conversation now, and maybe it's a very quick answer, but how will AI help or hinder what you do?
Interesting. AI is a tool, right? That's the whole point. I think you got to embrace it. I think it will get you about that much of that journey.
Yeah, it's small.
It's a small thing. It's very good for photography. I wouldn't use it to design anything because there's so much visual clutter. But I think for image making, it's good. Big issue with that is it's not authentic. So then, if you're working for a startup or something, you just plaster in AI stuff. It's like, well, that's all. I think you can visually tell there's no emotional sense there. It almost feels like it could sort of degrade instead of it looking visual, it could actually degrade that sense of belief in that product as well. I think we were talking to a photographer, a really good photographer friend of ours, who is actually embracing it. And what's interesting with him is, because he knows the technical like lenses and lighting rigs and things like that, he can then take a photograph that he's created, so he owns the copyright, and then manipulate that and almost change it into a moving image, which is super interesting. I think if you're the owner of the copyright and then you understand how it works, then it could really open up doors. But for the average Joe, and even myself, like knowing the prompts to do it, I just haven't got the time to sit there and go, I'm going to waste 4 hours of a day just trying to make an image.
That's not authentic.
That's not authentic. But the other question is, and it does come up when we talk to clients, is why would we not use AI for this image versus commissioning it? And the one word I have is control, because there's a machine doing it, unless you're a photographer who knows how to get that. So if there's a product and you say, actually, I want to get the light coming through or get an angle there, a 3D modeler would get there a lot quicker than waiting for it to go, oh, that's not right. Try again. That's not right. Oh, that would do. There's that thing of having control on it. And maybe in 5 years' time, it'd be more of a manual process where you can actually kind of do it. But currently, for me, it's the control.
Yeah.
You don't have that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned at the beginning there, David, I think you used the word with the inverted commas, influencer. So you've got your own Instagram page with a reasonable amount of followers. Talk us a bit about that.
Yeah, well, that's, I started that 20 years ago. So it was between jobs. I had, like everyone did, so this is before Pinterest, before Instagram, before all that jazz. I had a collection of bookmarks of photographers, design studios, illustrators. And I built a site to house that. I started at OPX. Dan, the web dev guy at the time. I showed him it. I did an intro about what I do and stuff. And he was like, "Oh, let me have a look at your Google Analytics." And I was like, "Okay." So, "Oh, you get quite a lot of hits." I went, "I don't know. It's just like, it's just there. People know about it. People I meet." And then, yeah, it's kind of been 20 years in the making. And now it is all Instagram, you know, it is all about the Instagram, but I've got the website still there, still gets its good hits. But for me, it's a curation. And it actually helps the studio because I'm visually aware of what's going on. So we have had times in the past where people put work up and talk about it and just look at it and go, "You can't do that because that looks like X, Y, or Z." So It actually becomes a filter, which is really, really good. I have immense enjoyment seeing some of the work that's from younger studios, people that I think, God, I wish I could do that, you know, or I wish I thought of that idea or that client. So it's brilliant. It's become this like own self-fulfilling thing that is, I wouldn't do it now. I wouldn't start a design blog now, no way. But 20 odd years ago, when there wasn't anywhere for anyone to sort of get these visual cues from, it was great. And yeah, I can't let it lie. I can't let it die. So I'll keep on doing it.
Great. Cool. Great to chat. Thanks for a bit of insight into brand and identity, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having us. Thanks.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
Poor flimsy humans. Don't you wish you were flawless like me? A towering inferno of physical perfection?
I hate to pop your blimp-like ego, but you're not perfect.